Welcome everybody, welcome to Knockoff Rugby, and the Wallaby side was dropped this morning. Few changes, but it's quite a strong side, so this video is going to be partly about their team and how I think it will stack up against the Springboks this weekend, and yes, it'll be a little bit of a preview, and I'll also give my prediction and what this means for both sides in terms of preparation, in terms of results, and in terms of the future going forward. To recap, last week was absolutely not very good for the Springboks, but it was wonderful for the Wallabies. They managed to produce the comeback of a century, winning at Ellis Park for the first time in 62 years. That is some feat. Nobody gave them an absolute chance before the game. It was almost as if the Springboks just had to arrive and the game was already done. So a bit of an upset there, but one, as a South African supporter, that I'm not too upset about. I think on one hand for Wallaby Rugby, it just continued the momentum of the Lions series. And, you know, we all call for a strong Wallaby side. And now that perhaps that is coming to light, we can't, just because it was against the Springboks, we can't go, oh, did we really mean it? We actually did. We really did. I like that Australian rugby is strong again. It's good for the Southern Hemisphere competition, and it's just good for world rugby in general. From a Springbok point of view, why I also think it was actually, a wake-up call is a little bit strong. What we need to remember is the Springboks have only lost one game or three games actually since the World Cup, since the round robin of the World Cup actually. So we need to take this into context. I think this was a real test of our new game plan. Last year, we did implement a lot of this running rugby in the wide channels, but it wasn't to the extent that we saw last Saturday. And so, there's always going to be a speed hump. I've spoken to a lot of my rugby fraternity. I've listened to a lot of news podcasts, and it is the general conception that everyone thought that eventually we would get a bit of a wake-up call. No one predicted against Australia, though. But here it is. So now it's what the Springboks do with it. In terms of a recap, I think the Springboks will be looking to fix their lineouts. Losing 6 lineouts, I think it was not great. Took a lot of launch away from us. And the breakdown, in those pivotal moments, I think Joe Smith said it himself, most of the breakdowns were actually dominated by us in terms of clearing out and getting quick ball. The Australians couldn't really slow down our ball, which is a very surprising thing because they're known for doing this. However, in pivotal moments, the Australians just managed to turn ball over, or we had handling errors. So, in hindsight, perhaps not the alarm bells that everybody is ringing. I think if 2 or 3 of those unforced errors that we committed in the 22 doesn't happen, we score tries, and all of a sudden it's a different game. So yes, I think for us it's a matter of perhaps cleaning up, gaining a bit more of a balance, and I think a lot of those problems will be fixed. Russie did say that they're not abandoning the new game plan because so much work has gone into it, and they believe that is how they're going to win the World Cup. Australia, I said it in one of my previous videos, and it was backed up by Russie in his latest conference. Australia are playing very much like the Springboks did in the last World Cup and in 2019, where it was defence, 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 counter-attack, off mistakes. And they believe that is not the way, and the Springbok coaching and management team believe that is not the way to win the next World Cup. In terms of the teams for Saturday, the Springboks have made 10 changes, something that they did say that they were going to make during, actually before last week's game. They did say that a few injuries have affected some of these selections. I don't actually think that they pivoted because of the loss. I think it's exactly that. Only a couple of changes, like Ethan Hooker would have played, Vince Tuka would have played. They are not playing because of key injuries we have in key positions. And Russie has decided to go with experience rather than giving it to the new guys. Some of you may not agree with that. Some of you may agree with it. It depends on how you look at it. I think they're wanting to gather a bit of momentum, and who can blame um, the Springboks? Uh, we as fans are pretty insistent when it comes to results, so you can't blame them, and I think it will work. I think it will bring a bit of stability back and get us a bit of that momentum back. I'm not saying in terms of result because it's actually a very difficult one to call this weekend, but I think we'll see the Springboks play more traditional rugby, and I think that's why those selections were key. In terms of the Wallabies, there's a big omission in Harry Wilson. Their captain, he's sidelined. I'm not sure exactly how long he'll be sidelined for, but that is a big loss for him because last week it was a captain's performance. He played with a lot of heart for a guy to sprint in a runaway try in the back end of a game at Ellis Park. His lungs must have been burning. He has an engine on him that is barely believable for a guy that does not look that athletic. So, big loss for them. However, Rob Valentini comes back into the side, and one could say that perhaps evens it out when Harry Wilson goes out and Rob Valentini comes in. But if you look at a full strength squad with Harry Wilson and Rob Valentini, it is a very different in terms of back row composition. Not their strongest back row, in my opinion. However, Rob Valentini really makes a difference, and he packs a big punch. One of the more, I would say, he's always been a common denominator when it comes to Wallaby selection for over the past 3 or 4 years. So that is a big up for them. And I know Harry Wilson is a big loss, but hopefully Rob Valentini can fill that void. In terms of Dylan Peach, he did sustain quite a hefty broken jaw on that collision with Sia Khaleesi, and if you go online, you can find a picture of that, and that is it's quite hectic. It is quite hectic. I was very surprised. I feel for the guy, and I hope he has a speedy recovery, and I'm sure all of you do as well. He's replaced by Corey Toole, dubbed Australia's fastest rugby union player. So it is a debut for him, and let's see. He comes from the Seventh Circuit, so that's very interesting. Cheslin Colby comes from the Seventh Circuit, and look where he's gotten to. So I think this could potentially be quite a turning point in the wing department for Australia. It'll be very interesting to see how he does under the high ball and how he does behind against a pack like South Africa. Generally, debuts normally happen against the smaller nations. He is definitely being thrown into the fire here. So let's see how he comes out. In terms of James Slipper, he's out with concussion, and Fraser McWright will then captain Australia for the second test. Joe Schmitz, he did comment on this. He said that Fraser McWright ended the game at Ellis Park as captain, and it only makes sense to let him start the next game as captain as well, which I don't think is a bad call. Fraser McWright leads by example in terms of what he does in the field. He can swing momentum very quickly, and I don't think you need a very loud captain. I think you just need a guy that does his job, does it well, and somebody that the boys can really rally behind. So I think this is a big up for the Wallabies. In terms of the captaincy for the Springboks, it will be Jesse Creel. He's done it before. He's a seasoned campaigner, and I like his selection at captain. I think he is a very good captain. Some people don't like that the backline captains are far away from the refs in terms of general play and in terms of quick discussions when players stop. But I think he gets around that pretty easily. Sorry. In terms of the overall teams, though, it's pretty contrasting between the two. You've got a few lower capped individuals, debutants in the Australian side, like I gave the example with Toole, and then you've got a little bit more reliance on experience and seasoned campaigners in the Springboks. One would argue that Jean-Luc Depree maybe not as experienced as others, but he's been around for a long time. He started for the Springboks 7 years ago. So it's been a bit of time since he started, but he did have game time earlier in the year. I think his ability is up there with our premier number 8, and I think he can really bring it to the Australians. He adds a bit of size, less dynamism, but he gets go forward ball, and he can get over the ball. A lot of people forget that he is good over the ball as well. So I think he's everything we want in a number 8. We're leaning on guys like Andre Pollard, Damien Dalende that are coming back. These are the guys that started in the World Cup final. In our 10, Andre Pollard, this is a guy that kicked us through the quarterfinal, semi-final, and the World Cup final. People forget that very quickly. I believe that he's still a premier fly half and should not be discarded as easily as I think he was being. In terms of differences in the game that I believe needs to come out this weekend, the Boks need to focus on their physicality. I think they move the ball way too much. I do. It's nice to see your side playing pretty rugby and scoring amazing tries. However, I think that there is something called the 20-minute rule, which Eddie Jones recently spoke about. You can't play with that intensity and that sort of running rugby for more than 20 minutes in the front end of the game. If you have to do it, it's going to be 20 minutes in the beginning of the game and 20 minutes at the back of the game. The middle 40 needs to be a lull. It needs to be an area of control, an area of territory balance. You know, 80 minutes doing that type of rugby, it's going to be very difficult. If the Springboks can pull that off in 2027 and they win the World Cup by running right, then I certainly will be proved wrong. But I do agree with Eddie Jones. He obviously knows a lot about rugby, a lot more than I do, and I think his 20-minute rule makes sense. If the Springboks find balance in this new game plan, I think they'll be very difficult to stop. Also, the Springboks need to fix their line out. I think that's why the 3 locks have been picked. One at 7, Mostert, Erge Snyman, and Ron Nokia. I think these guys you have 2 line-out generals, and you've got a guy in Erge Snyman who is not very quick around the edges. He normally, if you look at how the Springboks play, he normally stays very close to the ruck in defence and attack. This is because I don't think people realise he's actually not one of the quickest rugby players in the world, especially comparing to our other locks. However, he does get that first pod go forward, and he does get his arms out. So he's even though I've just said what I've said, he does still make an impact very quickly. And for Australia, this is an incredible opportunity. Not only did they win their first game at Ellis Park in 62 years, they also beat the Springboks for the first time in South Africa since 2013. And that game was played in Durban. I was actually at that game, and that was quite a big loss for us. It was quite a tough pill to swallow. And they've got the chance this week to back it up, back the momentum up that they are receiving, show the public in Australia that their rugby union team is one of the best in the world. Not only that, they also have the opportunity to beat the Boks twice in a row in South Africa for the first time in 62 years. Ironically, it's the same amount of times. I think it was in the same year as the year that they last won at Ellis Park. So there will be a huge confidence boost for them in terms of the win last week. It'll be a huge target for them as well to take those records and keep them and show the world that the Wallaby is afraid of nobody. In terms of what I think is going to happen on Saturday, from the Springbok point of view, I think we're going to go more direct. Rassie Erasmus did indicate that we're not moving away from our expansive game plan. However, due to the weather and from the selections that I've seen and we've all seen, I think we are going to be a lot more physical. We are going to try and grind this game out. The Australian side is a very strong Australian side now that we've seen. I think in the beginning, people just the Australian side's pretty young, so in a lot of departments, this is their 4th fly half in terms of O'Connor. I know he's got a lot of experience, but he's their 4th choice fly half. So I think the general rugby world just didn't know a lot of these players, but they have certainly made their mark now, and the Springboks will be very wary of this. I think we're going to use our line-out maul a lot more, perhaps even mauls in the middle of the field. But I think the general conclusion from myself is that the Springboks will be way more physical and way more confrontational. And I think the high ball with Moody and Cheslin, who can both get up incredibly well, is going to be very important, especially against the debutant Tool, who nobody knows how he's going to go in that department. That's one of the biggest departments for a winger at the moment, not just being fast and not just scoring tries. The aerial battle is where he needs to dominate to survive in this game. From a Wallaby point of view, I think they're going to also expect everything I've just said. The problem is, will they be able to stop it? They've got a lot of confidence from last week, and there's more records on the line for them this week. However, like the Lions series, once the Lions had got what they wanted, that third test was almost a dead rubber. I actually think that the Wallabies just wanted one test here. A professional rugby team will never say that. They'll say they want to win every game. But realistically, looking at touring a place like South Africa, I think they've got what they wanted already. A bonus point win. If they do somehow get themselves up again this weekend and they win the second game, that is going to be incredible. Then they are one of the favourites, got to be the favourites to win the Rugby Championship. I know that's a big say, but in order to, not even the All Blacks could beat us in one game last year. So, yeah, so they've got a bigger, I would say, mental mountain to climb in terms of this game. The Springboks, I would say, have more of a physical mountain to climb. They've got to get on the field and show that they can physically do it. Australians know that they can beat the Springboks. It's just whether they can get up for it again. I think the Springboks are going to win this game by 15 points or more. I do think it's going to be not going to be as close as everyone thinks. The Wallabies are a good side. I just think that maybe that first test has maybe taken it out a little bit. And the Springboks will now have a big test under their belt, not the smaller tests like the beginning of the year. And I just think they're going to be up for it this time. So you all tell me, what do you think? Is this going to be a Springbok redemption story? Are they going to show the world just where they are supposed to be and why they are lauded and why they have won back-to-back World Cups, a Rugby Championship, and a British and Irish Lions series? Are they going to return to the top of the mountain? Are they going to give the All Blacks something to think about before they come to Eden Park? Or is this Wallaby side going to be victorious again? Going to break all sorts of records? Going to show the Australian public that this is a team to get behind? Leave your thoughts and comments down in the comments below. And please like and subscribe if you really like this content. I'm trying to grow the channel. I want to give you guys as much content as possible. Subscribers and comments and engagement really, really helps. Thanks, guys. Cheers.